Hello, my name is Anne DeSantis. I'm the director for the St. Raymond Nonnatus Foundation for Freedom, Family, and Faith. I want to tell you what's been going on with us since we've been in existence in 2015. The Mercedarian friars came together and decided that they wanted to start a foundation to make outreach to families in crisis. And that's exactly what they did when the St. Raymond Nonnatus Foundation came into existence as a nonprofit 501c3 headquartered in Philadelphia. Since that time, I became the director in the beginning of 2018, and we basically have 4 facets to what we do. We offer prayer, priestly consultations, podcasts and videos, and also programs and events. Now, if you've never been to our website, just to invite you to go to nonatus.org and check out all the great things that we've been doing. Because since that time, since we've been in existence, we've now helped hundreds of families who are going through really challenging times. And as you all know, we went through a really challenging time in 2020. So I'd just like to invite you to go and check out the great things that we're doing. And there's more to come. If you or your church community would like us to come and do some type of an event where we can talk about what we offer in terms of that pastoral accompaniment and making outreach to families in crisis, please do reach out to us. And I'm just so grateful to be able to serve people like you and your families. So again, learn about us at nonatus.org. Thank you.
Fiat Ministry Network and Patchwork Heart Ministry present Journeys in Faith. Now, here's Anne DeSantis.
Hi, and welcome to Journeys in Faith here on this Friday evening. This is Anne DeSantis on Fiat Ministry Network. It's great to be here. I have another wonderful guest for all of you. I have Michael Shaughnessy. He is the founder of Grandly. You're going to find all about Grandly and learn about what he does and what his nonprofit does to help people and to help families. And so let me read you his bio. Michael was born in Minneapolis, Minnesota, April 30th, 1952. He has been a member and leader of the Servants of the Word, an ecumenical religious order, since 1979. He graduated from Orono High School in 1970 and St. John's University in 1974. He did youth and college ministry from 1974 to 1988. And from 1988 to 2003, he served in London, Belfast, and Munich in youth work and community, founding in the Sword of the Spirit. We're going to learn all about that on the podcast, on our show this evening. In 2003, he returned to the United States and did the same since. He wrote the Kairos Youth Culture newsletter from 2007 to 2020 and authored 6 books. He founded Grandly, a ministry to grandparents, in 2015. And I have to say, you have a wonderful bio. You have such experience even traveling in different sections of the world and spending time there. So welcome, Michael. Thank you so much for joining us in Journeys in Faith.
It's really good to be here, Anne. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And I know you and I have been trying to schedule this show for quite a while. So I'm really glad that we finally got to do it and finally able to interview you on this show here on Fiat Ministry Network. Let's start out with Grandly. You know, that's the latest project that you've done since 2015. Tell us what Grandly does and what you do.
So what we're trying to do is we're trying to put together two things that almost no one puts together, which is grandparenting and youth work. My history has been in doing youth work, and one of the observations I've had over time is that you really need to help young people grow up all the way now into their getting settled years. So oftentimes late 20s before they marry and settle in on their faith firmly for where they're going to be going for the rest of their lives. And that if what you do is you just work one sector, like junior high ministry or high school ministry or campus ministry or young adult ministry, oftentimes what happens as people go through transitions like that, that's when their faith crises happen. And oftentimes they leave their faith, they leave the church. And one of the things that I saw was that if grandparents are involved in the faith journey of their grandchildren, the grandchildren are much more likely to make it, which goes against what everybody would even think. Like grandparents doing youth work, kind of go, but they're in perfect position to do it. They have trust, they have relationship, they have love, they have all these advantages. What they don't have often is youth work skills. How do you do a one-on-one? How do you build environments? How do you use your time, your resources, your finances, your home, all these to help a young person grow in his or her faith? But if we equip grandparents to do that, they will become much more effective at passing on their faith, and they will solve one of the big issues that they have, which is a kind of discouragement that a lot of older people have today when they look at the world their grandchildren are growing up in, and they say, oh, I would not want to have to raise children in today's world because it's so messed up. And you go, yeah, that might be the right reaction, but it's not the right response. So what Grandly really tries to do is give grandparents both a hope for doing it, recognizing that they're actually called to pass on their faith, and then also methodologies for how you do it, so that they're equipped to be able to say, right, I know how to do a one-on-one. I know how to do small group environments. I know how to do a cousins camp or this, that, or the other thing. So it's just equipping them to take their role in their grandchildren's lives and especially pass on their faith. So,
yeah, and I think just in the ministry that I do, I'm actually the director, as you know, for Foundation as well. And we do a lot of work with people of all ages, but I do come in contact with quite a few grandparents, people that are over the age of 55, 60, 70. And a lot of them care so deeply about their grandchildren,
yes.
and they want the best for them. And many of them think about their grandchildren all the time in terms of that worry that they have about their well-being, but also about their faith. They want them to, to carry on the faith, right? And so I just think that's a beautiful thing. Like, use the word equipping. Could you talk a little bit more about that? Like some of those hands-on things that Grandly does to equip those grandparents.
Yes. So one of the bylines we use is that grandparents need to learn how to think, pray, and act strategically. Good intentions. In our generation, we were told where the good intentions lead you. They don't get anything done for sure. What you actually need is a strategy, and you need to learn how to think strategically, pray strategically, and act strategically. So oftentimes I will ask grandparents who are concerned about their grandkids, do you pray for your grandchildren? And they'll say, oh, yes. And then I say, how? And they say, and I say, you know what I think you do is I think you worry about your grandchildren, and that's not praying for them. And there's a big difference if you actually get involved with praying for your grandchildren. So making a list, looking at the things that you need to do. And most of them will say, I'm just not a good prayer. And I say, you know the Lord's Prayer? Yeah. You know your grandkids' names? Yeah. Well, just start off with that. Lord, I don't know what's going on in Susie's life right now, but she seems to be having something of a trial. I'm going to say the Lord's Prayer for her, and you intervene in a way that you know. And I go, what a great prayer. That's all it takes. Just do that. Get started doing that. And then you'll be less worried, because worrying doesn't get anything done. And then also just saying, how do you think? Well, the grandchildren are coming over on next weekend. And what I could do is I might go out for lunch with one of them and just say, how's school going, all the standard kinds of things. And then you might do something like, hey, did I ever tell you the story about when I was, and you actually tell your own faith story. So it's just simple ideas like that that helps them to think, oh, right, I can do this. And here's how I would actually do it. So learning how to think strategically, how to pray strategically, and how to act strategically is a key element in what we're trying to help them do. And then how do you do that in a way a youth worker would? Because you don't have to be substitute mom or substitute dad. You can actually come alongside of them and have a much more of a peer relationship, oddly enough, as a grandparent than you did as a parent. Parent has to be a parent. Grandparent doesn't have to be a parent. They can be someone else in their grandchildren's lives. So we try to help them just understand some youth work principles and to do those kinds of things. So.
Oh, wonderful points. And I like the idea of what you said. It's strategic thinking, but when you're inviting God into it, it's not as business-like as it sounds, right? I mean,
Yes.
It is planned out as something that you're doing instead of just worrying, you're praying that Our Father or the Hail Mary, whatever it is, but just offering it. You're inviting God into the picture, right? And I think that's where prayer really begins in what you're doing. I think it's really beautiful. I just want to say on a side note, I do understand what you mean about that whole idea of the grandparents and the friendship, because I myself was extremely close to my grandmother, my mother's mother. And to this day, I still remember some of those lessons that she's taught me and the way that she prayed for all of her grandchildren. So I think it's beautiful what you're doing. And, of course, Granley wasn't around back then, but good grandparents who prayed for their prayed for their grandchildren and really did extend that hand of friendship in an appropriate way. As you said, they're not parents, but they can have that deeper bond, a very deep bond with their grandchildren. I think that's just wonderful and beautiful. So thank you for sharing on that. So somebody's watching right now, and maybe they are a grandparent thinking, I want to check out Grandly. So what would be those steps, like as they went on the website? Is it something that could be integrated into their church community too, that they could talk to a pastor, or even in an archdiocese? Sometimes people who watch the show are from diocese or archdiocese. What would be some of those next steps that they may take?
Yes, exactly. Thanks for asking that question.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing is just simply go to the website, which is amazingly simple. It's called grandly.org. I'm not sure how we got so fortunate just to get that, that title for our website, but we did. That will get you a bi-weekly feed, as in every other week, a 3.5-minute read. And it just gives you one real clever idea, one thing you can do, one thing you can act on, one insight. How can you pray? Here's something that another grandparent learned about how to pray for their grandchildren, etc. So it's a feed that comes regularly to anybody who signs on to the website. If you register with us, then you get it automatically in your email. But for parishes and archdioceses, part of what we're working on right now is we're about to finish a online seminar so that people will be able to take a seminar online that walks them through the 4 main steps that we have in becoming a strategic grandparent. So the first one is really winning the battle of hope. So if you're discouraged and you're depressed or you're downcast about what's happening with your grandchildren, what you need is the Christian virtue of hope. And the way that we put it is, hope is what gives you the ability to say yes in the times of ugh. So getting people to be able to have hope and understand the motivation that they need, first one. Then the second one is this principle of how a grandparent can become a youth worker to their own grandchildren. How do you marry grandparenting and youth working so that they're much more effective at it? The third one is how to think, pray, and act strategically. And the fourth one is actually knowing what is the faith that you want to pass on. Because many grandparents run into this question. I'm not sure the parents of my grandchildren are on the same page as I am. And I go, get clear on what you're thinking about here, because oftentimes you just have to find the same page. Because I don't know of any parent who's saying, yeah, I don't want my kids to be honest. I don't want my kids to be responsible. I don't want my kids to be reliable. I don't want my kids not to be sassy. You can work with your grandkids to become better human beings. The moral life is part of our faith. doing the right thing. It's part of our faith. That's different than my grandkids don't go to church. You go, well, I may have to be able to at least say, can I take them to church with me when they come to spend the weekend? Yes, oh, that'd be fine. It's not, I'm not against church. I just don't go myself. And you go, okay, this is an opportunity to pass on faith, this experience of God. The second thing, how do I relate to God? And then the third one is you might well be able to do some doctrinal stuff, like how do you deal with the tough questions? It's like temptation and sin and suffering, all those kinds of doctrinal things. So you got those kinds of three different aspects. You can find a place that you can talk to your grandkids about faith, and you can pass on faith. You just got to get on the right page with the parents so that you're not working against the parents, you're working with them. And then it'll often open up other doors above and beyond that. Now, I don't know if I answered your question very well, but.
Oh, no, you did perfectly. And the word that's popping into my head are tools. And I love that word because that's what you're giving. You're giving these grandparents and the parents too that might be watching and thinking, I like that. Maybe I want to tell my mom or my dad about this. So I just think that's beautiful, and invite people to go to that website at grandly.org. So please check it out. Now we do have to take a short break. So hang on tight. We'll be right back here on Journeys in Faith.
Today, many students go to college with numerous questions about their faith, yearning to know if the seed planted in them as a child is both true and practical. Using the miracle on the road to Emmaus as a model, young adult ministers conversed weekly for 3 months with college students about the most pressing questions they had about the Catholic faith. As they journeyed together virtually, something amazing happened. Doubts disappeared, fears faded, and Jesus revealed that He is still alive. Hearts Burning Within Us, the latest book from Patchwork Heart Ministry, is a result of that grace-infused conversation. It is the perfect back-to-school gift for recent high school graduates and current college students. Get your copy for them today at patchworkheart.org or by calling 424-704-3278. That's 424-704-3278.
Welcome back to Journeys in Faith with my guest, Michael Shaughnessy. Thank you so much, Michael, for being a guest. And of course, you are the founder of grandly.org, and we were talking about that during the first half, about how your website and what you do is supporting grandparents to be able to have better relationships with their grandchildren and also to pass on the Catholic faith. So I just think that you're doing something really great because you're giving people the tools they need to really contemplate, how can I reach my grandchildren in that special way of being able to pass the torch of faith on to them for the rest of their lives. I wondered if you could address, if you could, there's some grandchildren, people who are, they're off on a bad path, and their grandparents that might be watching and thinking, maybe their grandson is on drugs. Maybe he is involved or she is involved in some things that are just very much away from their faith. Would you be able to speak to them? Because it might be a little more challenging for them. Of course, they can pray and they can go on your website, but would there be any other things that you think that they could do to alleviate some of that stress too? There's so much stress, not just for the parents, but for the grandparents when young people go off in a wrong direction.
So one of the big advantages you have as you get older is you have a long view of life instead of the short view of life. And you recognize that a hard left turn doesn't mean that they're going to go left for the rest of their life. One of the stories that we have in the first part of the seminar or the book, we have a book called The Strategic Grandparent as well, is about a young woman who the perfect grandparent's nightmare in some ways. She grew up well, great family, going to church, part of a youth group, doing all these good things, delightful, cheerful, all the rest of this kind of stuff. At 17, she hooked up with a guy. By 18, she was a unwed mother. The guy was long gone, and her life was just in a bad spot. And she wrote to us because her grandmother got involved, grandmother of her son, got involved in Grandly and started praying for her and teaching her grandson basic things, taking him to church, et cetera, et cetera. Their relationship got working well again. And I just saw her recently, and she's now she's married, has 2 kids, going to church, loves her husband, et cetera, et cetera. And you look at this and you just go, never take a snapshot and say, this is the whole story. You got to have the whole movie. You can't just get one picture and say, that's it. You can get some pretty bad snapshots. If they took a picture of you or me at the wrong time, you just go, oh my goodness, train wreck, looking for a place to happen, you know? But then if you really look at, you know, like Peter on the evening when he's betraying or denying the Lord, you just go, oh my goodness, how could God ever pick a guy like that, you know? Or Mary Magdalene, you just go, 7 demons, not my best friend forever, probably. But then you see what God does, and God does amazing things to turn people's lives around and brings them back to a different place. Grandparents have that long view. They can look at things with a certain kind of hope and say, you know, God's in this somehow, and he may be doing something important. And it's also very helpful for them in terms of even reassuring their own children when it's their grandkids going off the rails to some degree. Now, again, God gives us this absolutely insane freedom to make up our own minds and choose our own path. But the one thing you know is that he never gives up on us. And it's in some ways his problem, not mine. And it's really helpful to remember that the real issue here is between God and my grandson. It's not me and my grandson. That helps just relieve a lot of the stress that grandparents have, as does prayer and various other kinds of things. But there's just no magic bullet on any of these things. You just say, yeah, you just have to have faith, hope, and love, exercise those virtues, and you'll be doing the right thing. But it sounds simple, but it takes some work. Let's put it that way. So.
Yeah, I love how you put all of that and the wisdom of grandparents too, that they see that long view. And I know, I mean, I experienced that, like I said, with my own grandmother and how she was so wise in that way that, you know, I think when you have a good relationship with your grandparents in that way, and when there is some faith involved too, it's really, I think grandparents have a great power to be able to pass that on to their grandchildren.
Yes,
And sometimes even their great grandchildren too. I mean,
yes,
people
yes.
that wind up having great grandchildren.
Yes.
So it's just a beautiful thing of what you're doing at grandly.org. Now, I know that, you know, you and I were trying to schedule this podcast for quite a while, and some of your audience is also watching this show. And you were talking about how sometimes, you know, in life we get things are thrown at us and there's difficulties, but God is the one that gets us through. And I know that for you personally, that God got you through some things over this pandemic, and didn't know if you wanted to share for your own audience a little bit about that, because I really do admire your strength and how you persevere during difficult moments in your own life.
Well, yes. 1 year ago today, there was a question whether I'd survived the night. I had COVID-19. I got over COVID-19. But one of the things that COVID-19 can lead to is Guillain-Barré syndrome. And I woke up, 16 days after my first symptoms of COVID-19, and I had numbness in my fingers and my feet. I called my doctor. I said, I got these new symptoms. I don't know what they are. And he said, get into urgent care immediately. So I was on my way walking into urgent care, and it was like someone shut off the lights to my legs. And I collapsed down onto the sidewalk, broke my ankle in 3 places, and then went into emergency care instead because I had a terribly broken ankle. Got in there, and because I was in the emergency room, they were able to first handle the ankle and then said, so why were you getting into urgent care? And I said, well, I have numbness in my hands and my feet. Turns out, yes, I had Guillain-Barré syndrome, and within 5 days, I was paralyzed from my neck down. I could not move my arms or my legs at all. What Guillain-Barré does is it makes your autoimmune system attack your nervous system for no reason. They just don't understand it. Medicine is great, but it doesn't have all the answers. They said, we don't know why this happens, but this is what happens, and this is the if you get a bad case, this is where it goes. And then I kept finding out I don't have a bad case. I have a very bad case. So I ended up on getting intubated on a ventilator, no food, no water other than by mouth. All my muscles were just non-responsive. So I couldn't breathe because my diaphragm shut down. I couldn't speak because my throat muscles had shut down. I couldn't swallow because my throat muscles had shut down. So then they did a tracheotomy, and for 2 weeks I couldn't talk. And then my blood pressure went through the roof, and they said if he doesn't die of respiratory failure, he'll die of a stroke, probably tonight. But I had so many people praying for me. My goodness, I had a lot of people praying for me. And, I just think God didn't want me, getting my reward too early. So
That's right. And
yeah.
I'm one of the people that was praying for you because
Thank you.
it was a year ago at this time, as we're taping this podcast, the show, in very late January for a February air date,
Mhm.
and that you and I were supposed to
Yes.
have that show. And so I am just so thankful to God. And I brought that up during this show because I just think that is such a testament to prayer and how God got you through. And you're on Journeys in Faith a year later after all of
Yeah.
what you went through. So I just want to praise and thank God and for all those people that prayed for you, that are maybe they're watching this show and they're thinking, oh my goodness, I am just so glad that Mike is okay.
Yeah.
And that he's on a better journey. On that note, and as we're headed toward the end, we did go through an awful pandemic that we're still kind of, working through, and hopefully this will
Mhm.
be over at
Mhm.
some point, in 2022.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
some of those grandparents are ones that maybe did go through that isolation and weren't
Yes.
able to see those grandparents. I
Yes.
wondered if you could address them, because how hard was it? Any words of advice for them that didn't get to communicate and see those family members during the past couple years?
Yes. It's interesting you asked that question because I'm also writing a book on death and dying. And it's meditations, again, very short meditations, but it's looking at the what I call hints from God, that in every circumstances of life, if you look at it and say, is God trying to talk to me here? The answer is yes, he is.
Yeah.
And many of the things that we go through as we get older, for those who start to go deaf, you realize this is because I need to listen to another voice, not the voice of the world. Now, can I listen to the voice of God now? Various kinds of suffering and trials, they're meant to draw us closer to God, no matter what they are. And if we understand them and we look at them as this is God speaking to me in my trials, the trials get transformed because you say, wait, God is really with me in this whole thing. And that's what I experienced in the hospital. When I couldn't move, I couldn't talk, I just go, guess it's just me and God. That's not bad. That's okay. And then just saying, Lord, for part of the time, I couldn't even pray because I lost all ability to focus my mind. And it was just, okay, Lord, I am utterly in your hands. And that's all I could do. I tried praying the Lord's Prayer and I couldn't even finish the Lord's Prayer. And I go, what's wrong with me? I can't even maintain my relationship with God. And go, yeah, that's right. God maintains the relationship with you. That's what is the first step of faith, is this depends on God, and God is faithful, and he will do the things that a God who is love will do for you. And I experienced that. It was just profound, in fact. So whatever grandparents are going through, I just go, look and see, where's God's hand in this thing? He's in there with you. Just the question is, can you see how? And if you can, it just changes you. It does.
Oh, thank you so sincerely from me, and also from from Fiat Ministry Network, for sharing. It's wonderful. And I'm so glad that you survived this past year. Not only survived, you're thriving, you're back, little by little, right? You're getting back to
Yep,
normal.
yep.
And
Yes.
what a blessing. And the wonderful advice that you offer to families, to grandparents, to parents, and even to the grandchildren too, of course, directly to the grandchildren. So I just want to thank you, Mike, so much for being a guest on this show. I would love to have you back again. Asking our audience to please go to grandly.org, check it out, learn more about Michael, and also, considering him for your ministry, your church, your archdiocese, your diocese. Please do connect with Michael Shaughnessy. Michael, did you have any final words before we end?
The especially if they're really trying to advance the ministry, would be to get the book, The Strategic Grandparent, into the hands of directors of religious education or diocesan directors of religious education, because one of the main audiences the church needs to reach is young people. And the other main audience they need to reach is the people who are in the pew, which are oftentimes people 55 to 70. This book helps them see, here's a way to reach both in one go. So,
Yeah, great job. And is it available on the website, or will it be?
it
it
is
isn't yet?
available on the website. It is available on Amazon, and it's available through the publishing company, which is the Word Among Us Press.
Oh, the Word Among Us. Okay. Oh,
Yeah.
that's so great. Well,
Yeah.
congratulations on all your wonderful work. And again, I'm so glad that you're doing well. And we'll see all of you here next week on Journeys in Faith on Fiat Ministry Network. God bless.
Bye-bye.
Journeys of Faith is a production of Fiat Ministry Network and Patchwork Heart Ministry. For more information about Journeys of Faith, email info@fiatministrynetwork.tv. And be sure to friend, follow, and like us on social media. Just search Journeys in Faith with Anne DeSantis.